next year, back with a new video, and as you guys can clearly see from the thumbnail, courtesy of Headhunters Edits, um, we are basically doing another part to the Red Hood series. Now, in the last part, Azuku straight up ended Overhaul, or Chisaki, whichever way you prefer calling him. But basically, a couple of the heroes were in outrage hearing this, especially heroes like Endeavor, who definitely disapproved of Izuku's actions in the past couple of months and becoming a vigilante and all. And how now he's going to end up going scot free from all of his crimes that he's committed because of his special sort of case with him being quirkless. And with the amount of new vigilantes on the streets because of Azuku's major influence, apparently. Other heroes argue in Azuku's case, mentioning how, well, people like Endeavor have done much worse in the past, and sometimes heroes did actually have to kill sometimes. It's not necessarily that It's not necessarily something that they really approve of, but it's more so in a dire situation. When it came down to Overhaul and how his quirk worked, well, they kind of had to end him this time around, unfortunately. Because with how he operated, he could have actually just set himself back to square one, where he had no bullet wounds and all of that, completely heal himself. Hearing this, they decide to just end it, mentioning how Izuku was on some thin ice right now. But Nezu was with Izuku in this, and Nezu was very intelligent. He argued in Izuku's case very well to the point where there wasn't much to really argue against Izuku anymore. The next day passes around. Izuku basically is enrolled into UA, but the way he's enrolled is different from in canon, where he had to just fight robots and do the sort of other test. I don't know what. Oh, written test. That's the word. That's the word I was looking for. Because of all that Izuku had done, and considering how late in the year it was, what they ended up doing instead is they enrolled Izuku into UA as a new student for Class 1A. But in order to make it official, they also had him do the whole sports festival. So I'm just skipping past some of the events because I just felt like it. Not much really changed, anyways. And so when Izuku is brought to the sports festival, he is, of course, in the UA track uniform. There's no way he was about to be able to wear his costume. He was able to bring some of his equipment, though. So we had things like explosives and I don't know, explosives, a katana, and that's pretty much it, really. He wasn't allowed to bring his handguns because obvious reasons. He, like, the only time where someone was allowed to ever bring a gun to school was because it was snipe. And because of how his quirk worked, he kind of had to. Although the type of guns that he brought when he went to UA were Nerf guns. Why? Because I said so. But you guys basically get the point here. Izuku doesn't wear a mask though, so when people see Izuku, they start to give him some weird looks, wondering what is he doing here? What is the Red Hood doing here? Why is this vigilante here at our school? And why is it that none of the teachers are doing anything? And like some of them didn't hear the news about how Izuku was going to try and become a legit hero this time. And they were even made less aware of the fact that, well, Izuku was also, well, being enrolled into UA to make that a reality. In order to actually help with this rise in vigilantes. Because they noticed a recent trend when it came onto vigilantes. They would usually wear red hood costumes, makeshift red hood costumes, and quite a few of them were either quirkless or they had rather weak quirks. So hearing that, well, the vigilante Red Hood, who was able to garner such an influence in only a couple months, was actually quirkless. Of course, people would want to emulate him at the time. So, so of course, now Zuku would try and put a stop to this, try and stop with this influx of vigilantes on the streets, because, well, some of these guys were just tarnishing his name and he hated it. He hated it. The very beginning of the sports festival goes the same as in canon, with Bakugo saying how he's going to win and beat everybody, all that good stuff, but he says it with even more cockiness in his voice this time around. And even says, oh, to all of the quirkless people out there, I don't care about this Red Hood guy. I'm going to crush him as well if he steps foot in this school. And that's basically what Bakugo says. You guys get the point here. Um, what's really interesting though is when it comes down to the whole obstacle course. That's when things get interesting because of the fact that, well, Azuku has to really think outside the box here. Like most of it goes the same as in canon, honestly. When I say that, I'm only talking about the whole very first part to the obstacle course where everybody is going through this tunnel. But afterwards, Azuku just brings out his katana and starts slashing at some of these robots, knocking them down in the process, completely making a sort of barricade, making these robots more of an obstacle than they already were for some of the other students, because they kind of were blocking the way now. And some were even getting crushed, but Azuku noticed that, well, there were a couple students ahead of him. One was this candy cane looking dude. I think you guys know who I'm talking about. The candy cane haired looking dude. He was all the way at the very front of the pack. Then there was Bakugo, who was blasting off with his explosion quake. Azuku was trying to keep up, but it was kind of difficult because he didn't have any sort of augmentation. He was just very physically fast and strong, at least for a regular human. I don't know how to describe the rest. Who making? Of course, I know how to describe the rest. I'm good at this. How long is this? Yeah, think, 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 Titan. Um, when it comes down to the whole thing with the tightrope, Azuku does the same thing as in canon here. He just climbs on the rope upside down. But this isn't all that hard for him this time around because, well, he's experienced much harder things before. And he's trained in a lot of martial arts, so he knows how to balance himself correctly. So this is a piece of cake for him, really. It's only when the minefield comes into play that's when things finally get to be kind of interesting for him. Because he sees that, well, Bakugo is now in first place. He's actually ahead of Todoroki here. Of course, Azuki doesn't know Todoroki's name, but you guys get the point. But he sees and he sees that this kid, the kid with the two-toned hair, he is using his ice in order to actually make a sort of path that would allow him to freely get through the minefield without setting off any of the bombs. Azuku just looks at the minefield, grabs his explosives. By the way, these are explosive marbles, just to clarify, and throws them at the whole minefield with two explosions happening at once. What do I mean by this? Basically, Azuku's marbles set off first, and then because those marbles set off, the the bombs that were hidden underneath the field, they'll set off as well, clearing up a path for Azuku to just really just sprint all the way to the very top. I say to the very top, but to the very end, I mean. But unfortunately, Azuku does not get first place here. Bakugo does. Why? Because Bakugo was basically flying the whole time, avoiding every single obstacle. He didn't have to worry about having to really slow down. Besides, his arms starting to cramp up a little bit. At the very least, Todoroki, he had to slow down during the tightrope, and he had to also slow down in order to really keep himself balanced on his ice. What happens is that Izuku was able to actually get the jump on Todoroki, being able to sprint past him. He only got second place, so he was a little disappointed that he didn't get first place. But once midnight calls the fact that, well, Bakugo ended up getting the 10 million points, Azuku was actually relieved here because, well, he did not want to be in that sort of situation with everybody gunning down for him. He noticed those glares. He actually felt a little bad for Bakugo here, especially with how he made that declaration in the very beginning of the sports festival. Next up is the, what do you call it again? Is that whole horse thing, that horse and rider thing. I forgot the whole name, but the cavalry battle. Uh, Zuko was actually struggling to find people here, much more than in canon because, well, he doesn't know anybody here. He ends up finding a couple people though. There's one dude with a bird head for whatever reason. He wondered what quirk this guy had. Um, he also found this one guy who looked like he hadn't slept in days. Finally, he found this girl with pink hair who said that she actually admired Izuku for being so creative with his babies. That's what she called them. Izuku took a step back here when he heard her talk about babies, although for some reason, because he didn't know what she was referring to at first, but when she pointed out her gadgets, how she had a lot of gadgets, Azuku Azuku's heart rests here because at first he thought she was actually talking about actual babies, and he was seriously wondering, what? How old are you? What have you been doing for the past couple of years, woman? But of course, you guys already know who this is, Mei Hatsume. I'm pretty sure a lot of people actually like her though. But that's besides the point. Because he managed to get this ragtag team and he is gunning for Bakugo here. A couple of teams and try and gun for Izuku and Bakugo as well. But in Izuku's case, he he is a rider here and he knows how to subdue people. He actually deactivates some of their quakes. How? Chi block. Yes, I am adding that here. Like one of my friends on Discord had mentioned how oh you should give Izuku, what do you call it? You should give Izuku Chi block here. I was like, you know what? That sounds interesting. This was a couple months ago, unfortunately, and now I'm just adding it. But basically, the way Chi block works here is that it's more so that Izuku is able to use pressure points in order to cause people to lose the ability to use their quirk in one of their limbs, essentially, or more than one limb. But it's only temporary, so it's not like they have to be worried about their future or anything. Well, they're kind of frightened at the fact that they just lost the ability to use a quirk in one of their limbs, especially with how their limb is numb. They can't even move their arm or their leg for whatever reason. They're wondering, what exactly did Izuku just do to them? And some of them is screaming, wondering, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, what is happening? This actually causes them to lose focus a couple times, and Izuku is able to snatch some of their headbands during the distraction. And if it wasn't for that, if it wasn't necessarily Izuku's distraction, it would be Shinso's distraction, causing a whole bunch of insults to some of the people there. Talking about, oh, your parents never loved you. You were a mistake. They would talk about how, oh, their parents loved them and all of that. They just said all that stuff only to get trapped in Shinso's Genjutsu. I know this is not Naruto, but I just felt like saying it, okay? Uh, like, hook, line, and sinker. Like, it was so obvious, but so many people just kept on falling for Shinso's tactics. Izuku actually respects that. He kind of likes Shinso here because of just how useful he is. Other times he would use Dark Shadow. Dark Shadow would come into the play, where they were able to sneak behind some of their opponents, grabbing their headbands. These opponents, they never saw it coming though. They didn't realize just how far Dark Shadow can stretch, to be honest. Some of them didn't even realize Dark Shadow was a thing. They didn't even know about Tokuyami's quirk. So that made things even worse for them. But even better for Izuku. For Izuku's team, they were racking up points, but they were still gunning for Bakugo's team. Bakugo, he was going kind of ballistic though. He had the same team as in canon because I don't see why not. But still, um, he's able to do a couple interesting things. He's able to snatch a couple more headbands, and another thing, he's still in first place here. But Todoroki's team, they're also gunning for Bakugo. It's at the last minute. That's when things get interesting because Izuku is like in second place, Todoroki is in third place. Fourth place, is real. It doesn't really matter, to be honest. Fourth place is whatever. I don't care enough for it. I can't think too much about it. All I know is that's just gonna be probably the same thing as in canon. But after all of this has happened, they're both gunning for Bakugo's team at the very end. They have like 1 minute left, 30 seconds left actually. Izuku grabs Mei's jetpack and launches himself at Bakugo. Bakugo sees Izuku and Smike's getting ready to set off an explosion in Izuku's face, starting off with a right hook. Now, Todoroki actually freezes the whole area though, making that gigantic glacier. But this does not deter either one of them. Bakugo doesn't really even focus that much on Todoroki here. He focuses straight on Izuku because he wants to actually beat Izuku here. He wants to show that he has improved to the point where Izuku is no longer a challenge for him. He wants to show that he is the superior one here. These two end up locking fists though. Izuku is able to grab Bakugo's wrist and twist it a little bit before he tries and grabs his headband. Or at least one of the headbands. He's thinking that, okay, maybe this one is the 10 million point headband. He is actually very close to grabbing it, but Todoroki, in the last ditch effort, he has either used his reciprocal burst and kind of knocks down Izuku. Not only that, but he actually uses his fire here. Unfortunately, um, the Todoroki team, they they are not that successful here. Unlike in canon, but they still managed to grab some of Bakugo's headbands. Izuku's team, they actually are tossed. Izuku was actually tossed away, but Izuku manages to still grab the 10 million head pointer. Once the time runs out, that's when the scores come in, bringing up how Izuku's team is now in first place while Bakugo is in second place. Not second place, actually third place because of the fact that they had lost their 10 million head pointer. They weren't really gunning down so many points, more so trying to protect their 10 million. But Bakugo was still able to grab a couple headbands because Monoma exists, that's why. That was the only reason why they were able to even be all the way up there. But yeah, that's pretty much how it is. Bakugo is extremely upset here. I mean, who wouldn't be? You were in first place, now you all the way down in third place. Come on. Come on. Bakugo feels like kind of just ripping out some of his hair at this point. He's frustrated because Azuku managed to get the one up on him. And one of the least conventional ways ever. He hated it. Azuku didn't like the way that he was able to to actually get first place here either. And he doesn't accept the win, to be honest. It's only going to be the last event where he's going to really consider the wins. Because this is the one-on-one matches. This is when everybody is waiting for, and that's how I'm going to end it. Yeah, yeah. Actually, no, forget that. Here's what I'm going to do. Izuku versus Shinso. Izuku wins. He already knows Shinso's trick. He already knows Shinso's quirk, and Shinso is well aware of this, but he figures it may still be good good enough to try. Plus, if he was able to get Izuku to fall into his trap, it would be some major bonus points for Shinso in order to get into the hero course, because he was literally able to trick one of the most famous vigilantes in all of Japan into falling into his quirk, being able to defeat one of the most well-known vigilantes who has such an influence in the streets right now. Which really makes him wonder, like, why was he even accepted into UA? Why was he allowed to even make it into UA in the first place? But Izuku, he doesn't respond at all. He has he is more controlled in his emotions here, and is able to just charge in at Shinso and just sucker punch him all the way out of the ring. When it comes to all the rest of the matches, they pretty much play out the same as in canon, except for Deku versus Todoroki. Deku actually brings out his katana and explosives here. He realizes that this Todoroki kid, number one, he is related to Endeavor, and number two, he is actually very powerful. He notices that he doesn't like to use his right side, I think. Basically, he doesn't like to use one part of his quirk, though, his fire side. For whatever reason, he wasn't about to get too much into it, though. He doesn't have that encounter with Endeavor, though. So, Izuku is not even more willing to. Izuku isn't all that willing to let Todoroki have that sort of advantage in his whole quirk arsenal, if that makes sense. Basically, Azuku didn't meet All Might here, so he doesn't have that willingness to really get Todoroki to use his quirk in order to really rescue him. But instead, he still wants him to use his fire sign because he doesn't understand why not, unless it physically hurts him or whatever reason. But Azuku just takes out his katana and explosives. Every time that Todoroki launches an ice attack at Azuku, Azuku uses his explosive marbles to basically explode the ice, cause ice shards to spread all around the ring. Izuku just charges at Todoroki with his katana in hand. These two are clashing at each other. Izuku is trying to go a bit ballistic, and Todoroki he's trying to make sure that he's relatively close to Todoroki so he doesn't launch those long-ranged ice attacks. Todoroki is on the defensive here. He doesn't have enough time to really focus on using his ice side. And during the process, he accidentally uses his fire side. Izuku smiles a little bit before he uses a bit of a dirty trick. Um, no, I'm not gonna add that. No, no, no. But Izuku grabs Todoroki's arm and does a pressure attack. He uses that chi block attack in order to cause Todoroki to be unable to use his eyesight. When Todoroki realizes what Izuku did, he realizes now that he can only use his fire side if he wants to even have a bit of a chance to win. Todoroki curses underneath his breath before he tries to fight Izuku barehanded, going brawl for brawl, going bare fist for fist. Because if he was trained by the number two hero for a whole decade, I'm pretty sure he should have picked up some martial arts skills along the way. But he's just not as efficient as Izuku is, considering how he had gone about his martial arts training. Izuku is actually having the time of his life here. Bakugo sees this and is a bit of a tsundere here. He just huffs and is like, I could do so much better. Yeah, all that good stuff. But Izuku is still able to get the head up and get the advantage against Todoroki because he's just not as proficient in martial arts as Izuku is. Izuku is able to sweep the legs from Todoroki and is able to pick him up by the collar and throw him out of the ring. That's how I'm going to end this. And yeah, um, I really don't know how to end this besides remember to share, like, and subscribe. Also, be sure to comment what you want to see in this in the next couple of parts and all that. Give me ideas. King Tiny next out. Bye.